Have you ever been so hungry you wished food would just fall from the sky? Well, believe it or not, there are stories in the Bible where that's exactly what happened. Today, we're diving into 5 incredible moments when God rained down food for his people. This isn't just about miracles. It's about seeing God's incredible love and provision in the most unexpected ways. You won't believe some of these stories, so stick around. Let's start our journey in the vast, empty desert. The Israelites had just escaped slavery in Egypt. They were free, but they were also hungry, really hungry. Imagine being in the middle of nowhere with millions of people and no grocery stores, no farms. Nothing. They started complaining to Moses and Aaron, saying, "If only we had died by the Lord's hand in Egypt. There we sat around pots of meat and ate all the food we wanted. But you have brought us out into this desert to starve this entire assembly to death." It sounds dramatic, but their fear was real. What would you do? This is where our first amazing food miracle happens. God heard their cries. He told Moses, "I will rain down bread from heaven for you." And the very next morning, when the dew lifted, the ground was covered with a thin, flaky substance. The Bible in Exodus chapter 16 describes it. The people had no idea what it was. They asked each other, "What is it?" which in Hebrew is manhu, and that's how it got its name, manna. God gave them specific instructions. They were to gather just enough for each day, an omer per person. But on the 6th day, they were to gather a double portion, because the 7th day was the Sabbath, a day of rest, and no manna would appear. Some people didn't listen. They tried to save some overnight, but it became smelly and full of maggots. Others went out to look for it on the Sabbath and found nothing. It was a daily lesson in trust. God was teaching them to depend on him for their daily bread, literally. And here's the most mind-blowing part. This didn't happen for a week or a month. God provided manna for the Israelites every single day for 40 years. 40 years? That's over 14,000 mornings of waking up to find breakfast waiting outside. Can you even wrap your head around that? It only stopped the day after they finally entered the promised land and could eat the produce of the land. This incredible, long-lasting miracle showed God's faithfulness and his promise to care for his people even in a barren wasteland. Okay, so the Israelites had bread from heaven, but after a while, they got a bit tired of it. They started complaining again. We remember the fish we ate in Egypt at no cost, also the cucumbers, melons, leeks, onions, and garlic. But now we have lost our appetite. We never see anything but this manna. You can find this in Numbers chapter 11. They had a craving for meat. They were tired of the same old thing every day and longed for the variety they remembered from Egypt. Their grumbling reached God, and he responded. But this time, it was a bit different. God told Moses, "Tell the people, consecrate yourselves for tomorrow, and you will eat meat. The Lord has heard you crying. If only we had meat to eat. You will not eat it for just 1 day, or 2 days, or 5, 10, or 20 days, but for a whole month until it comes out of your nostrils and you loathe it." God was going to give them what they asked for, and then some. So what happened next? A wind went out from the Lord and drove quail in from the sea. Quail. The Bible says they settled all around the camp, about 3 feet deep on the ground, for a day's journey in every direction. That is an unbelievable amount of quail. The people were ecstatic. They went out and gathered quail all that day and night and all the next day. No one gathered less than 10 homers, which is a massive quantity. They finally had their meat, but there was a harsh lesson attached. While the meat was still between their teeth, before it was consumed, the anger of the Lord was kindled against the people, and he struck them with a very severe plague. It was a powerful and sobering reminder that while God provides, our attitude matters. He cares about our hearts, our gratitude, and our trust in his timing and his ways. The desire itself wasn't necessarily wrong, but their complaining and lack of gratitude were. It's a story that challenges us to be thankful for what we have, even when we long for something different. Now let's fast forward a few hundred years to one of the most famous prophets in the Old Testament, Elijah. Elijah was a man on a mission for God, but it made him a target. The wicked king Ahab and his wife Jezebel were hunting him down. So God told Elijah to hide by the Kerith ravine, east of the Jordan. Again, We have a man of God, alone in the wilderness, with no obvious source of food. So, how did he survive? This is where it gets really cool. In 1 Kings chapter 17, verse 6, the Bible says, "The ravens brought him bread and meat in the morning, and bread and meat in the evening, and he drank from the brook." Did you catch that, ravens? These birds, which were often considered unclean in Jewish law, became God's delivery service. Twice a day, every day, they brought Elijah his meals. Think about the detail here. It wasn't just scraps. It was bread and meat, a full meal, and it wasn't a one-time thing. This continued for a long time, until the brook dried up because of the severe drought in the land. God used the most unlikely creatures to sustain his prophet. It shows us that God's methods of provision are limitless. He can use anything and anyone to accomplish his will and to care for those who follow him. If he can command ravens to deliver steak dinners, he can definitely take care of our needs in ways we could never predict. Elijah's story doesn't end there. After the brook dried up, he went on another journey and eventually found himself in a showdown with the prophets of Baal on Mount Carmel. It was a huge victory for God, but it made Queen Jezebel even more furious. She vowed to kill him, and Elijah, exhausted and afraid, ran for his life. He journeyed a day into the wilderness, sat down under a broom tree, and prayed that he might die. He was at his absolute lowest point. He said, "I have had enough, Lord. Take my life." He then fell asleep. And this is where our fourth food miracle happens. An angel touched him and said, "Get up and eat." Elijah looked around, and there by his head was a cake of bread baked on hot coals and a jar of water, a heavenly meal delivered by an angel right when he needed it most. You can read about this in 1 Kings chapter 19 verses 5 through 8. He ate and drank and then lay down again, still overwhelmed. The angel of the Lord came back a second time, touched him, and said, "Get up and eat, for the journey is too much for you." So he got up and ate and drank. And here's the kicker, strengthened by that food. He traveled for 40 days and 40 nights until he reached Horeb, the mountain of God. This story is so powerful. It wasn't just about physical food, it was about spiritual and emotional restoration. God didn't just send food, he sent an angel to minister to Elijah in his darkest hour. The meal gave him supernatural strength for an incredible journey. It teaches us that when we are at our breaking point, God meets us there. He provides not just what we need to survive, but what we need to keep going, to find strength, and to continue the journey he has for us. If you ever feel like you've had enough, remember Elijah under the broom tree. God sees you, and he knows how to provide the strength you need. And now, for our fifth and perhaps the most famous food miracle of all. This one involves Jesus himself. A huge crowd, more than 5,000 men, not even counting women and children, had followed Jesus to a remote place to hear him teach. As evening approached, the disciples came to him and said, "This is a remote place, and it's already getting late. Send the crowds away so they can go to the villages and buy themselves some food." It was a logical suggestion, but Jesus had something else in mind. He turned to them and said, "They do not need to go away. You give them something to eat." The disciples were stunned. All they could find was one boy's lunch, 5 small barley loaves, and a small fish. What was that among so many? It was laughably inadequate. But with Jesus, a little is always more than enough. In Matthew chapter 14, verses 19 to 21, we see what happens next. Jesus told the people to sit down on the grass. He took the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and looking up to heaven, he gave thanks and broke the loaves. Then he gave them to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the people. And here's the miracle. Everybody ate, not just a little bite, but everyone ate until they were full. All 5,000 men, plus all the women and children. And when they were done, the disciples picked up the leftovers. There were 12 basketfuls of broken pieces left over. They started with a tiny lunch that wouldn't even feed the disciples, and they ended with more leftovers than they started with after feeding a massive crowd. This miracle is just overflowing with meaning. It shows Jesus' compassion for the people, his divine power over nature, and a beautiful picture of who he is, the bread of life, who can satisfy our deepest hunger. He takes our small, inadequate offerings and multiplies them in ways we can't even imagine. So there you have it, 5 incredible times God made food appear out of thin air. From manna in the desert and quail from the sea, to raven-delivered meals and angelic catering, all the way to Jesus multiplying a boy's lunch to feed thousands. These stories are more than just amazing historical accounts. They are powerful reminders that God is our provider. He sees our needs, He hears our cries, and His ability to care for us is not limited by our circumstances. Whether we're in a desert, in hiding, or just feeling overwhelmed, He can and will provide. What do you think? Which one of these stories blows your mind the most? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you enjoyed this journey through the Bible, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more videos just like this. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.